Well, welcome back, everybody, to Two Pastors and a Mic. My name is Channock,
And I'm Cory.
and we're so grateful to have you join us wherever you're listening or watching from. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
If you haven't already, like we say every week, like, share, subscribe. Also, leave a review. You can do that on Apple Podcast. You can rate us with stars on Spotify. Or if you're watching on GAN through our YouTube channel, you could leave a comment, let us know
it.
that
Do
you
it.
appreciate this podcast or what you appreciate, or if you have a question.
Do it.
We would actually like a little bit of communication from you, our listener. We actually have a lot of people that do reach out that stop us when they see us to just say thank you for the podcast, and we appreciate just all of those little affirmations along the way.
I have been getting a lot of email questions, which I appreciate. We do appreciate your questions, but not from this podcast, from our sermon series through Hill City Church, which is a dicey one, Reframe, which if you're podcast listeners, it's not going to be new information because we did Who is the Devil podcast and all that stuff. We've talked about judgment and wrath often. We'll talk about it again here in a couple weeks. But again, thank you for taking the time or allowing us to take the time to go through your book. Enough already. We just went through 7-8 weeks of that. It was awesome. We're big people in giving you content and information and tools and resources to grow in your walk with Jesus. Enough already. What if I told you we're actually going to be spending the next couple weeks going through different free eBooks, which I've shared a little bit about this. My goal this past year was, do you think I could release 12 eBooks, one ebook a month, 15 to 20 minute reads on various topics that you don't really have a whole book for, but I have a lot of notes. It was actually fun for me to organize those in a coherent manner. And so those ebooks can be found online on my Gumroad site, Cory Rice, CoryRice.gumroad.com. I believe that's a website. How embarrassing would that? I didn't even check that if that's it. But if you can find it on, you can find it on my socials, my website, saintsnotsinners.com.
Saintsnotsinners.com.
But we're going to tackle the first ebook that I released back in January. We're going to go through these over the next 12 weeks, because there's 12 ebooks. 2 of them haven't even yet been released for you. But we wanted to give you a whole bunch of resources, and those are all free for you. Pay whatever you want, free. And I know I've heard a lot of feedback, and some of them are tough, like religious conversations. Some of them are fun. I believe today's conversation is real fun. It was how to have success without climbing the ladder. And the reason for why we did this in January was because, many people have New Year resolutions, and there's just a lot of frustration around ladder conversation, as if you are climbing this ladder, whether this is within your career or achievement or whatever financial number you have defined as successful, or a title that you might be chasing, all those things. We kind of want to confront some of those ideas. Some of those ideas are healthy to a degree until they start to control you and define you. And so we kind of want to just talk around success. We've had these conversations around success and defining success for different areas, around marriages, around finances, around career, around parenting, around individual achievement and individual things that you're trying to produce or create within the world. And so we just thought it would be good to kind of explore these different conversations around purpose and peace and presence. And so, today, how to have success without climbing the ladder. It's a 12-minute read. You can find it and get all the content. We're going to go through the 10 areas that I give suggestions to. Right. And hopefully today is an interactive podcast where you might even be pausing and contemplating what we're saying.
And you should, and our listeners should, just because one of those things I feel like that's going to be very pertinent today is everyone can walk away with something that they come up with on their own to how they define success.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's going to be critical.
That's the goal. And so if you've ever felt like this pressure to perform, which, your entire Enough Already book was about that, or to keep climbing, or to move the goalpost, so to speak, once you achieve whatever you thought was success, or to prove your worth by what you accomplish or achieved. And I do believe that this conversation is for you. We're going to be talking about the different ways to define success, not by climbing the ladder, but by faithfulness, consistency, joy, those 3 words to kind of describe it. We're going to use other words to use to describe it. But as we start, you, the listener, how would you define success? And that's the question that I want you to be wrestling with. Maybe have this conversation with your spouse. Maybe think about it by yourself before you have this conversation with your spouse or coworkers. We want today's conversation of, hey, how do you define success? And I think that's a really good icebreaker question to get people really thinking about what they're doing and why.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we have to start with is to define the area that we're talking about, because I would say that answer is going to vary a little bit depending on, the area that I'm thinking about. Like, am I thinking about success in being a husband, being a dad, being a business owner, leading a nonprofit, in life in general? Like, what is that?
Perfect. That's exactly what we're asking. So why don't you go ahead? Because I like that he just brought this up. Channock is so good at on the spot. And I'm sure if you were to think about it for an hour, you might text me tonight and say, here's a different answer. But let's put you on the spot. You gave some very great suggestions of how success will look different depending on what hat you're wearing. So let's put that hat on. How would you define success as husband, Channock, husband to Mel?
So as a husband, I would define success as my wife, Melanie. I don't want to make it broad, like still in love with me, but I think one of the ways that I would say could show that would be a success to me would be that she still wants to actually spend time with me.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, let's change hats. For Jude, Titus, Malachi, and Isaac, what's success as a dad?
Now, this might ebb and flow a little bit too based on the seasons, but because my oldest just moved out on his own, I've been thinking a lot about this. Like, was I a good enough dad to them? Did I raise them the right way? Did I train them up in helping them navigate life on their own? And so for me, success as a dad would be if my boys are able to make coherent isn't the word, educated decisions and choices on their own that better their life.
Wise decisions.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I know you're probably going to be thinking about this. This is good. Again, if you're a husband or a wife or a parent or whatnot, these are going to be good for you to be processing. It's really, really good for you to do this. How would you define success as Pastor Channock?
I think for me, a couple different things in leading, and I actually mentioned this in the book where I talk about how the metric for success completely shifted and changed. And now I just ask people, did we love you well? And if the answer is yes, then I will count what we're doing as a success. I think to even go a little bit deeper in that, I think if we're creating an environment where people feel welcomed, seen, heard, have a sense of belonging, to me, that's the biggest success in leading this. Leading this church is creating a safe, inclusive culture. So that would be success for me.
Okay, let's change hats again, and let's just go personal for Channock. And this might be a very unfair question unless you've really been contemplating this on your own.
Well, personal. Then there's different subcategories of personal because then you can get success financially for me personally would be I want to make sure my retirement is at a level. And I do have some goals around that so that I don't have to feel like that I have to do what I'm doing at 65, 70, 75 just to get a paycheck. If I'm doing ministry and leading people at that age, I hope to be able to do it at that point because I just love to do it. And so I have certain numbers that will be a success for me to be able to retire officially, but then just still help in my calling as a pastor. Not my vocational title as a pastor, if so you will.
Said there's a lot of subs. So, there's another one.
Well, I don't know. Just I think in life in general, if we just want to put a broad spectrum over it, I would say success for me is, I would say at the end of the day or at any time in my life, in my mundane moments, am I experiencing peace?
Oh, that's a good one. Peace. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Peace is success for me because it follows every other area that I might want to think about.
So this is good. So I give 10 suggestions or 10 actionable steps to help you build a path for success for yourself in any area of life. And the first suggestion I have you do is to define success for yourself. And this is one of those things that I say in counseling all the time, like you have to write this down. If it's not written, it's not real. And I believe that yours are already written. We've had a lot of conversations over the last decade around success and trying to not be defined by titles or accumulations and achievements and finances, and changing the definition of success personally. So you've really helped me with that. I believe that you were able to recite that because you have already had them written down.
I've thought a lot about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but if you, the listener, have never written down how you define success, that's my first suggestion is write it down. Because I believe that success is an attitude, and it does mean different things for different people depending on what you want to do with your life. And so I kind of put mine in two different subcategories. This is how I defined it in the book, is I believe that success should be measured by mental health, physical well-being, relationships, enjoyment in what you do, and autonomy. And so look at those 5 things and the plethora of all the different categories that you have. And then I say I define success specifically by using 5 words, and peace is one of them, but it's faithfulness, kindness, integrity, contentment, and peace. And I think you could use those 5 words to look at the relationship with your spouse, to look at the relationship with your kids, to look at your relationship with your career and your jobs, and to look at your relationship with the friends that you have. Or do you kind of give those types of words, faithfulness, kindness, integrity, contentment, and peace, into success? And so this is actually a fun conversation. I've had this with several friends. It kind of catches people off guard because they don't really think this detailed around different areas. And I say, if you're not going to be able to define success in these different subcategories, like, are you actually thinking about the life that you're living and what you want to have unfold? So,
and I would say it goes back to even the title, How to Have Success Without Climbing the Ladder. When you would ask, and I don't know if you've done this or not, just random people that you meet or encounter, or even people that you know, how would you define success? Like you just said, the interesting conversations you have. I would probably have to argue that 90+% of them probably just go to some financial figure or number. When I become a millionaire, I'll be successful.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that means you can't experience success until that happens. And what if that's when you're 60 something years old? Yeah. So you're never going to count yourself as a success till then. And I think that's the problem, but that's exactly what you're getting at.
Yeah, for sure. The second thing I do is you got to know who you are, and it comes back to identity. This is kind of what this podcast has really been about, is living from a place of authenticity. We both literally wrote books right here, What If I Told You, and Enough Already, around identity and our struggle with it, how we've come to understand our identity as sons and daughters in the kingdom of God. And so, again, those are a plethora of resources for you. The third one is to practice positive self-talk, which is specifically my devotional book around that. You just got to believe in yourself the way that God believes in you. And that's a very controversial statement. I didn't expect that to be as controversial as it is. I have a shirt that I made for all of my leaders that says, believe in yourself. And then the BU is highlighted. And I wore that on the David DeVos podcast, and the people in the comments were like, you should never believe in yourself. You should believe in God. And it's kind of missing the point of what I was trying to articulate in believing with yourself. That goes back to a conversation around union, and there is no separate between the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and you. Like, we're all united in one. But believing the right things about who you are and aligning how you speak to yourself the way that the Father speaks about you, which is in righteousness, peace, and joy. Like if you're negative and you have negative self-talk, you are agreeing with the wrong lens. And it's important to it. And I think that is a massive play in how someone defines success, thinks about success, and lives successful in their lives. The fourth one is to create what you love. Man, I am so sick and tired of people saying, I'm not creative. That's not true. Every single human being is creative, because you were created in God's image and likeness, and He is the great creator. Okay, you're comparing yourself to an aspect of creativity that might not be your gifting,
right?
But that's a wrong way to look at creation, because you are a creator too. You have things to create, whether they be relationships or organizationally, or a business that provides income for families. Like, that's creating. And so I love this phrase, and I didn't expect this to be controversial, but it has been, is People who create give people who do not something to talk about. And so a lot of times people won't create because they're scared of criticism. Well, criticism is going to come because that's just the nature of our world.
Yeah.
So overcoming that is a big hindrance. Like you have to overcome that to be able to create and therefore create what you love. Create what you love. You're passionate about something.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's one of the things that as a parent, we probably all tell our kids, like, we would rather you do something you love, even if it doesn't translate or equate to some high dollar success, because we know, like, what lived experience, right? And life happens. We know, like, create something that you love and be a part of something that you ultimately love. And at the end of the day, you have peace because you're loving what you do.
Yeah,
right?
You've really challenged
and
me
what's the
that.
phrase? Find something that you love to do, and nothing you ever do will feel like work.
Yeah,
something like that.
Something like
That's
that.
not exact, but
hey, it works for me.
My version, off the top of my head.
Number 5 is find and keep the right relationships. Oh my goodness, this is so important to your success as an individual. Is having the right people in your corner. I know we talked about it last week, and Floyd Central Soccer had a disappointing loss in sectionals, and Coach Scott invited me to come and talk to the kids a couple weeks ago, and I introduced to them this whole idea of Bundini Brown. Do you know who Bundini Brown is? And most people, if you read my book, you know who Bundini Brown is, but I asked this question in almost every setting is, who is Bundini Brown? And I'll ask it with a follow-up question, because most people, I've yet to hear anybody who knows who Bundini Brown is.
Right.
But I'll ask this question. Have you ever heard the phrase, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee? And people immediately are like, yeah. I know who is that. Muhammad Ali. And what you won't know, the listener, is Muhammad Ali is who made that famous. Muhammad Ali is not the creator of that statement. The creator of that statement is Bundini Brown, because Bundini Brown was Muhammad Ali's hype man. It was one of the guys in his corner believing in Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali credits Bundini Brown for his success. He said, without Bundini Brown, I'm not as successful as I am, because I had somebody in my corner believing in me. And I get so motivated by that by Bundini Brown. I've done a lot of research on Bundini Brown. I love Bundini Brown. And you have been a Bundini Brown to me. I hope that you feel the same about me. You got to find Bundini Browns in your corner to be there for you, not just when the moments are great, but when the moments are low, to help believe in you. And so I use this locker room metaphor, which I shared about this past week in church. Is it's one thing to see who's celebrating with you in the locker room when you're winning, but it's more important for you to see who's still in the locker room when you're losing. Those are the people that you want in your corner. And so I really think that a successful person has Bundini Browns around them. And it's important for you to find those types of people.
I love that.
The sixth one is, you actually helped me develop the last 5, and they have been conversations we've kind of said subtly on this podcast before. The sixth one is to stay curious and talk less. And it's all about, like, the loudest people in the room are usually not the most educated. Being curious, not just in faith conversations, but in life. You should be curious in other people and not always trying to talk every single time. 7 was celebrate victories, no matter how small. That's a successful person.
We talk a lot about
celebrating yourself on the way to where you're going. Number 8 is practice gratitude and contentment, which, man, I still really struggle with contentment.
Yeah, me too.
So just because I'm giving these as suggestions, just because I wrote this ebook, doesn't mean I don't, like, I've nailed all of these things.
Yeah.
This is something that is a constant reminder to me, is that thankfulness is an attitude, and it is learned and needs to be practiced. You gave out a challenge to our church because we have prayer requests and praise reports. And you're like, hey, we haven't heard from anybody in the last month, and we want to hear a praise report. And we had like 7 8 emails. I even got more emails after our meeting this morning, where we prayed for people, just people sharing what they're grateful for. And some of them were like, hey, we're still struggling, but it was a good reminder to be thankful. And this is something I struggle with, and it's something Julie and I have talked a lot about, of just trying to fix our mind on a spirit of gratitude.
No, absolutely. And I think going back to success, it really is like a mindset, and contentment is a huge piece of that. Living content, again, because that's where peace flows from.
Yeah. Number 9 was criticize less and affirm more. Again, it goes to the type of spirit you carry into every room. In the ebook, I say, I live by 2 don'ts and 1 have. These have been my challenges. This is not a challenge to you. You can adapt them if you want. But My two don'ts and one have is don't criticize beliefs I haven't studied, don't critique seats I haven't sat in, and have fewer opinions. And that has been a struggle for me. Here's the biggest struggle is I've done really well at having less opinions about things. Doesn't mean I don't have them. I just don't share them. I have found myself getting offended that people still have a lot of opinions about me when they don't even know me.
Yeah.
When I've been trying so hard to have less opinions. So it's okay. Here's the mirror again. Introspective. Gotta work on myself some more. So criticize less, affirm more. You'll be a better friend when you are that type of person. And then the last one, again, we did a whole series on this, was just eliminating hurry from your life. These are the 10 ways to help you define success and contemplate success within the different subcategories in your life as a spouse or as a future spouse. Like, it'd be great for you to get this stuff down before you're even married, not looking for the right person, becoming the right person for people.
Yeah, and that's huge. Of course, going back to the last few weeks and even what I wrote about, and I think we probably got more feedback on our podcast, and I know the most listens when we talked about margin. If you remember that chapter in my book, and just about what you just said, it's one of those things where that probably for me would be another measurement of success in my life, not just the piece, but am I living with margin?
Yeah, it's good. The margin is, I do share it in the book. Someone was like, "Are you sure you want to share that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." I'm a bourbon guy, and I actually, more than bourbon, I like the culture of bourbon and learning about the history of bourbon and how it even came to be. And if you're in a season of waiting, like, remember the finest bourbon, which in my opinion is a George T. Stagg, it takes 15 years to make. And so just that process of being present and not being in a rush and not using words to define your success as something that needs to happen immediately. Like that, there are anomalies for that, but allowing the long game to kind of play out. Because again, and you shared this around destination addiction, is success is not in the destination. It's in the attitude you have as you journey. And so those are the 10 ways. I'll read them real quick again. Is define success for yourself, know who you are, practice positive self-talk, create what you love, find and keep the right relationships, stay curious and talk less, celebrate victories no matter how small, practice gratitude and contentment, criticize less, affirm more, and eliminate hurry from your life. And so we have some reflection questions. Do you want to read those?
I was just going to go one more thing based on that last point you made, number 10, and just since you brought up bourbon and how that's a 15-year process. At the same time, you get to enjoy that because someone 15 years ago put in the work. And I'm just thinking about like our success and the work that we put in now to not climb the ladder, to put in the work, how to have success now. What work can we be putting in? Process, mental health, emotional health, physical health, that yes, we might reap the benefit from, but I would say also the ultimate measure of success is being able to do something or to leave an inheritance, a legacy to others based on the work that you did to be able to help them. So
I love that thought process. So if you haven't been pausing this episode and processing them individually, here's some reflection questions for you as we end this episode. Talking around success is, how would you, the listener, personally define success? I would encourage you to write it down. Maybe write it down in 5 words like we did around faithfulness, kindness, integrity, contentment, and peace. What words would you use to describe your version? And even do it for the subcategories if you need to. The second question is, who are the people that celebrate you for who you are, not what you do? Name them. Reach out to them this week and maybe thank them. That's a tangible way. I mean, relationships grow because of your gratitude. The third question is, when was the last time that you celebrated you, whether it was a small victory or not? Take the time to recognize your progress instead of trying to be perfect. We talk about that a lot. And then the last one is, what's one area where you've been in a hurry, and what would it look like to slow down and be present? If you had to choose one action step from this episode to apply this week, what would it be? And you have to write it down, because if it's not written, it's not real. And then you can revisit it next week before we listen to the second edition of How To.
There we go. So write it down. If it's not written, it's not real. I think I want to close out the episode by saying this. no matter if you feel like a success or not, no matter if you feel like you get to a level of some of these things that you write down so that you're not a success or not, I just want to remind you that at the end of the day, you are a son or daughter of God in whom he is well pleased in. And so set in that as the ultimate success of our lives. And with that, just know you're loved and there's nothing you can do about it.